Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Wyandot County Museum, to our latest Thursday evening at the museum presentation. And we appreciate everybody being here. And if you haven't had a chance to sign the register, if you could do it before you head out, it just helps us kind of keep track of how many people we have here. So we've got a lot of programs coming up in the next couple months, including some very new programs that we're going to be discussing. On September 2nd and 3rd, Sarah Fisher, the curator at the Overland Inn, is working with Brian Long, and they're going to be hosting a collector plate show on Saturday, September 2nd and Sunday, September 3rd during regular hours. There's no cost to attend, so we encourage everybody to go up there. Apparently Brian has numerous totes of collector plates and historic dishes and everything, and he's excited to share them. And then we're preparing for the Wyandot County Fair. We have our annual silent auction out at the fair in the log cabin as a fundraiser. So if you have a business or you hasn't been approached, want to donate, or you want to donate an item or something from yourself or your organization, just let us know. We've got things from all over the county. We want to include as much, so that everybody knows that this is the Wyandot County Historical Society, not the Upper Sandusky Museum. So, then we've got our next Thursday evenings at the museum program is going to be a panel discussion on the 70th anniversary of the murder of Cynthia Peel, which is better known around here as the Red Slipper murder case. So we'll have several people, up here talking about that. And Bonnie has kind of twisted my arm. I'm giving back-to-back programs in October for the Thursday evening. I'm going to do one on October 12th, which was an unscheduled one. But in June, some of you may know, I went out to Oklahoma and Kansas to visit with the Wyandot in Delaware. So Bonnie wants me to share that with the public, even more than what was in some of the local newspapers. So that'll be October 12th at 7 p.m. And then October 19th, I'll be doing a program on the murder of the Celery King, better known as William Johnson, 1902. And his case actually had a wider impact on the state and the nation than a lot of people know. So to find out what that was, you'll need to be here. So that's our teaser for October. We are having our annual gun raffle, Historical Society raffle. Tickets are $20. We only have a limited number of 500. So the winner gets your choice of a $1,000 Walmart gift card or a Colt Python handgun. So if you're interested, let us know. And the last one coming up in December, I'll let Bonnie talk about, which is another new event that they just put a committee together for.
The reason I'm talking about this is because Ron is so excited he can't control himself. We're going to have a fashion show here. And we're really working out the details, but it's going to be a festive evening. We hope to have representatives, from local clothing shops, and maybe have some models here. The women board members will wear clothing that fits from upstairs in the arts department store or upstairs from our textile collection. And believe me, some of the clothing that women used to wear, the waists were really, really tiny. I tried one on a couple of years ago, and I just got it over my head. And that's as far as it went. So anyway, it should be an evening. It's going to be something we call a mocktail party, which is obviously, it's supposed to resemble a cocktail party, but we don't serve liquor here in the museum. So it'd be fun. The museum will already be decorated for Christmas, and Jean Oriens is going to help us decorate a little bit more. And I feel a little bit guilty about up here talking about this, but Marty Reber is the one who came up with the idea, and she's here. So she's a real creative force behind this. So especially women, look out for this. We'll have a good time, and I'll keep Ron under control.
And if you didn't catch that, that'll be December 15th.
I forgot to say that.
So from 5 to 7. So it'll be an evening program. we'll have the Christmas open house the first couple of weekends in December, so there'll be trees and festive decorations. But enough about all our stuff that's coming up. We've got kind of exciting program tonight that I'm excited to listen to, and hope that I can learn some stuff that I can share with visitors as they come through. But we have representatives of all three of the major Wyandot County libraries here to speak to you. So I'm not sure exactly what order they're going in, but I will just say, if you want to raise your hand, we have someone from the Upper Sandusky Community Library. If you want to. We have someone from the Dorcas Carey Public Library, and also the Sycamore Mohawk. So I'll let you, whoever wants to go, and I'll give the microphone. You can kind of, if you want to introduce yourself as you come up and where you're from. So thank you for being here this evening.
Thanks, Ron, for inviting us. So I'm Kathleen Whitt. I'm the director of the Upper Sandusky Community Library. Thanks for inviting us. We're excited about this. We all learned a lot doing research for these programs. Actually, first I'm going to talk about just the history of library funding in Ohio, because this is where we all came from, really, and where we all are now. Most of the information I've got comes from the Ohio Library Council, or OLC, which advocates for Ohio libraries with the state government and its agencies. Then after I'm done talking about the funding, we'll take turns. We're going to go chronologically and let Laura talk about the Carey Library first, and then I'll talk about the Upper Library, and Kristyn finally with the Mohawk Library. So the history of public library funding in Ohio traces the growing commitment of its citizens to the importance of lifelong learning. The very earliest libraries in America and everywhere were private collections belonging to wealthy individuals. And then later, as universities and other organizations developed, they would have their collections too, but they were not public in any sense. The first more or less public libraries weren't supported by communities or governments or taxes or anything. They were subscription libraries. So you would pay a subscription, a membership, to belong to the library and to be able to order or borrow books from that. In 1817, the Ohio General Assembly enacted legislation providing for the incorporation of public libraries, but they didn't provide any financial support. Then the School Act of 1853 codified local tax support for public schools, and some of that tax money was used to create school libraries, which were open to the public. In 1869, legislation was passed that authorized municipalities to open and maintain free public libraries, which made it possible for communities to apply for Carnegie grants in the early 1900s. The Carnegie Free Library Program provided funds for the construction of 1,689 public libraries in 1,419 communities across the United States. Communities requesting a Carnegie Library were required to provide a site and pledge an annual appropriation for books and maintenance. Ohio built 106 public libraries with Carnegie grants, and many of these continue to serve their communities today. One of these is the Dorcas Carey Public Library. Beginning in 1933, public libraries in Ohio have been supported to at least some extent by taxes from the state level. First, by revenues from the intangible property tax, which was levied on individuals' holdings of intangible assets, mainly stocks and bonds. Then from personal income tax receipts, and then since 2008 from the General Revenue Fund, which includes personal income taxes, sales and use taxes, business taxes, etc. So since, for the last few biennial budgets, the libraries in Ohio have received 1.7% of all the revenues for the state, and that was just put into permanent law in June when they passed the most recent budget. Overall funding from the state has decreased a lot over the years, so libraries have increasingly found it necessary to have local tax levies as well. At this point, all but 49 of Ohio's 251 public library systems do have a levy, and all of the ones here in the county do have a levy. We had our first levy on the ballot in 2009. I think Carey probably did about the same time, and maybe this is when we'll have to close the library or we need local money. We also have successfully passed our levies and all have successfully been renewed, so very grateful to the communities for the support. Without it, we couldn't do what we do. In 2022, the Upper Sandusky Library received slightly less than 48% of our revenue from the public library fund from the state, and slightly more than 48% from the local tax levy, and about 4% from bequests and the fees when you make copies at the library, that kind of thing, mostly bequests. And I'm assuming that the same proportions are very, very similar for the other libraries. So we're dependent on state and local funding at this point to provide the services we provide to our patrons. That's it for library funding. Now we get the fun stuff and Laura.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for having us here. We're real thrilled to be here. As Kathleen said, I'm Laura Toland. I'm the director at the Dorcas Carey Public Library, and this is my assistant librarian, Mandy Houston. I'd like to thank you for inviting us here. Of course, one of my favorite things to talk about is the library, so I'm thrilled to be here. Thought I'd give you a little bit of history on myself first, that I began working in the library in 1986 as a part-time assistant librarian, and then I became fiscal officer for 24 years. Then after that, in 2014, I became the director. Little did I know that when I would visit that library when I was a little kid, that I would be spending at least 38 more years of my life at that place, but it's great, so. Okay, on to the history. 117 years ago, we had a group of 36 residents set in motion a series of events that led to the building of the Dorcas Carey Public Library, which happened in 1906. The following details are what led up to the opening. In April of 1882, under the leadership of the local attorney, W.T. Dickerson, the first public library in Carey was organized. Meeting in the office of Dr. W.R. Barton, the group agreed to purchase 150 books and offered them for loan at the public at 10 cents per volume. Just like Kathleen said, you know, we didn't get the money back then, so they had to pay for the membership. So 10 cents they took out per volume was what they paid. The People's Bank, we used to have a People's Bank in Carey. Does anybody else remember that? This was actually called the People's Library, is what they named it. And Dr. Barton became the librarian. And by the end of the year, they had added 21 new members to their organization. And 2 years later, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, in conjunction with the Circulating Library Association, opened the Carey Reading Room in front of Zimmerman's Gallery on East Finley Street. I tried to find some information on that. I came up with no luck. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of the Zimmermans. Have you, anybody? It's new to me. I have never heard that. With the proprietor, J.F. Zimmerman, a photographer, he became the librarian since he was there. So the People's Library turned over all its books to the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and 150 new volumes and newspapers and magazines were added to the stock. Then a total of $750 was collected from the members and from private parties for maintenance and operating expenses. Included was a $100 gift from the village council, the first time that public money was ever used for the library. By the end of 1885, the Circulating Library Association boasted of 86 members. The public had free access to their reading room. And in 1887, the Women's Christian Temperance Union was forced to close the reading room due to the lack of funds. The books were left in the care of Mr. Zimmerman, and in 1891, The Literary Society of Carey was organized, and the Circulating Library Association transferred all of its stock and interest to the new group, reserving for themselves the free use of the library for the first time. The society named Miss L.L. Rader librarian and moved the books to her fancy goods room on Finley Street. So from the furniture store or whatever to the fancy goods place. They charged the public 50 cents per year for library privileges. And in 1893, 500 more volumes were added, and the entire operation was then moved to the Carey High School. It was open to the public there, with the Board of Education in charge of all the financing and the operations. It was named the Dickerson Library in honor of the man behind the founding organization in 1882. Financing, however, proved to be rocky, and there was a problem again, and a few years later, the circulation of the books were halted. Or around 1900, by the provisions of a statute of the state and the favorable action of the village council, a board of library trustees was appointed. A small amount of money received from a tax levy was placed in their control, with which to replenish the stocks of books and revive the declining interest in the Dickerson Public Library. And from that time on, people finally picked up on what a library was. The interest picked up and everything increased. Although it was part of the public school, its usefulness to the community was great. It was about this time in 1904 that Andrew Carnegie, there's our buddy, he's our good guy, a financer, set aside $43 million, that's a hard math to say, $43 million to establish libraries. His plan was that any community could have a sum of money to build a library if it would supply the land, and agreed to furnish 1/10 of the amount of the donation for the upkeep of the building. Now, Mr. Greeley Chambers, he was the Carey mayor, and he began a correspondence with the Carnegie office in New York to obtain funds for the building of a public library. And this proved to be successful, and the Board of Trustees received $8,000 from the Carnegie Fund. And we have the Chambers letter up there, right? I was thinking you were going to hold it up, it's on our thing there. To provide a site for the building, Mr. Edwin Brown donated $5,000, of which $2,000 was used to pay for the site, and the remainder used toward the furnishings and books. The village had agreed to pay $800, or 10% of the Carnegie gift, for yearly maintenance of the building, and the cost of a librarian and janitor service. The library was named the Dorcas Carey Public Library after Mr. Brown's wife, Dorcas, who was the wife of the Honorable John Carey, for whom Carey was named. We have a lot of fun with that picture when we give tours to the children and they come in, they always ask me, who's the guy in the hat? So we have a lot of fun with that portrait. The construction of the building was completed in 1906, and the dedication ceremony was held at the Snyder's Opera House on October 19th, 1906, and Miss Mabel Newhart was the first librarian. And there we have a copy of the program that they used. The building remained the same until 1967, when extensive remodeling was done. The children's books were then moved to the basement in what was formerly a meeting room. And here we have different stages of what the library looked like. In 1977, the trustees had a levy passed to supplement the Bicentennial Committee's gift. They proceeded with building the addition, and it was completed in October of 1979. The adult section was moved to the new addition, and the children's section was then moved again upstairs. In 1985, Mr. Arthur Stahl bequeathed $50,000 to the library for the purpose of building the second floor to the addition, which was built in 1979. With his gift along with the money the library had accumulated in the building fund, the second floor was added in 1987. I'm starting to date myself here because I remember this now. The adult books were again moved to the upper floor, and the children's books to the lower floor. The community, along with school children, pitched in with moving the books through a human chain. We had 2 stairwells there, and we had a lot of fun that day. I mean, the kids were great, the adults were great, and it was a good experience. You will notice in the background of this picture that you can see the grain elevator along with the White House at the side of the library. Those were eventually demolished, and the White House used to be a my mom used to go there. Charlotte's hair salon used to be there. And that's when I would get to go to the library on Fridays, because she'd be over there and I'd get to go there. And it was even better because the grain elevator was behind the library, and I would ride with my dad when he would take grain in, and I could sit at the library for a couple hours while he would go back and forth. So that was kind of the beginning of my library career right there. In 2017, a much-needed outdoor storage building was constructed with a grant provided by the Mary Martha Class Donor Advised Fund. And in 2018, the library was awarded a grant of $35,000 from Upper's Winter's Fantasy of Lights to remodel a downstairs storage room into a meeting room, the room's original purpose. The beautiful building is one of the 104 public libraries that were built from 79 grants totaling $2,846,484 awarded by the Carnegie Corporation of New York from 1899 to 1915. The Dorcas Carey Public Library is a 6,400 square feet. There are 4,720 registered borrowers. We are open 56 hours a week with a total circulation in 2022 of 105,534. We own approximately 60,000 items valued at approximately $908,000. In 1998, the library was named one of the best public libraries in America by the Hennon American Public Library Rating Index. We ranked 15 in the 2000 to 9,999 population category. There's so many items I'd like to share with you, but we'll only mention a few now. And if you're interested in seeing more, please come up and see us. We've got lots of goodies here to show you. But Mandy's going to hold up, we have a membership circulation book that we found, that in the front of the book, they put the members, and then halfway through the book, they put the books that we had and how much they were worth. So she has that. We also have an original membership card. Yeah. The one thing we found most interesting that we found, Mandy did anyways, we were looking, we found blueprints of the original furniture that we had. It was very intriguing. We still, Mandy, can tell them what, I guess I can't see what you have there.
We have a blueprint of one of the original tables we still use at the library in the reading room area. We have card catalog still on display.
Full of cards.
Yeah. Here, we still look at papers. The newspaper rack. My favorite,
Yeah, mine too.
Mrs. Toland's desk.
I still use the original desk from 1906. That is really neat, yeah.
You want me to continue?
That's okay, we'll go on.
Okay.
So those were neat. We also have a rental receipt from the Snyder Opera House. Have you ever heard of the Snyder Opera House that was in Carey at one time? We actually rented there, and that's is a $10 receipt for renting the Opera House for the library for a while. And we have a, Dorcas Carey herself made a sampler that we brought along. She was only 8 years old when she has done this. And we also brought a unique thing. We actually have Dorcas's glasses in her glass case. And the pocket watch belonged to John Carey. So. And then the one thing that I remember more than anything when I went to the library a lot was the stereoscope. And this was one thing when you showed up, boy, you always had to ask, but boy, the librarian said, be careful, we had to be really, really careful with this. I don't know if you've ever looked at one of those, kind of like one of the viewfinders, it's neat. So we brought a box of goodies in case you want to look later. So, and one of the most touching things I think that I have received in my time, we had a gal, she's probably about 4 or 5 years older than I am. Her name's Becky Russell. She was an author. And she has always kept one of our reading program papers that we always put our little stickers on, record our books. And And as she wrote on top of there, such a nice little poem and what the library meant to her and what librarians meant to her, and it's just kind of touching. So if you get a chance to read it, that's a neat thing. That's kind of one of the neatest things I think we've gotten up there. But in closing, the library is such a vibrant part of our community. So much has changed since 1906. The library still has books, but now has so much more. From audiobooks to movies to music to computers to iPads, tablets, hotspots, we even pass out COVID-19 tests to patrons. The library is no longer just a quiet little place to read. It's a safe haven for our children, a place where people of all ages come together for educational programs, craft workshops, summer reading programs, story times, preschools. The library is now a community center for everyone of all ages. Several people have always questioned me if modern technology like the Kindles and tablets will eventually make libraries extinct. I can honestly say, no, I don't think so. There are too many people come in for all the other services. It just isn't for books. We're busier now than what we ever have been. Our continuing levy passed last year with such a high percentage. That is the proof to me that our community still considers us a vital institution. Throughout my 38 years of service, I am always amazed to see the generations of families that pass through the doors. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve the Carey community in Wyandot County. Thanks again for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm back. Thanks, Laura. That was really, I knew this was going to be fascinating. Okay, hopefully I can figure out how to work this. Or am I going back the other way?
Turn it the other, turn.
Oh, I'm upside down. Oh, yay, Upper Sandusky Library. So, this typewritten document is really, really hard to read, but that's where I got a lot of the very beginning information on the Upper Sandusky. It was the Carnegie Library, right, at the beginning. In 1904, the Usando Literary Club, which still meets, and still gives us a little bit of money every year too. They're just a lovely bunch of ladies. They felt the necessity of a reading room for the boys and girls of our public schools. There's the original group. Well, we don't know what year that was exactly, but we're going to assume it was maybe the original group. I actually have a copy of that over here with with numbers over their heads. So if any of you knows any of these people, we could like kind of capture who they are. That would be really fun. We had it in a display at the library a few years ago. So a committee composed of members of the Usando Club conferred with the county commissioners in regard to obtaining the reception room in the courthouse for a reading room for the kids. This room wasn't available at the time, but the Usando Club's interest in a public library just kept growing. They were advised by the Federation of Women's Clubs to confer with other clubs. After so doing, Miss Downey of Columbus, who was state organizer of public libraries, didn't know there was such a thing, was invited by the Usando Club to give an address to all the people interested in the movement. The meeting was held in the assembly room of the courthouse. The small sum of $6 obtained from this lecture was turned over by the Usando Club to the Library Association. On March 18th, I think that was March 18th, 1912. On April 19th of 1912, the Usando Club paid the Library Association $25. So that was the beginning of the funding of our library. So the Usando Club had no small part in promoting and helping to establish the present Carnegie Library, well, the Carnegie Library for Wyandot County. The site was purchased from George, I think, Pierman. It was really hard to read the name. By popular subscription for $1,800. On April 26, 1912, a benefit was given, which was sponsored by the school board. The next day, April 27, 1912, the school board met and named the library board of trustees, which consisted of 7 members, and Charles Plum was the president. Andrew Carnegie gave $10,000 for the building. Ron showed me some really interesting documentation on that, which I hadn't found, so it's out there somewhere. I'm gonna ask him to give this to me. So we got $10,000 for the building from Andrew Carnegie. Many of the first books were donated by public-spirited citizens. The library was dedicated on November 19th, 1914, and the first librarian was Mary E. Kirby. And from what I can tell, it looked like maybe there were 3 staff members at that time. And that's the original Carnegie Library. The formal opening of the library was on Monday, November 23rd of 1914, so it took a couple of years to get it going. There was an afternoon program featuring a number of speeches and several musical performances. I found that really just interesting. People knew how to do things fun back then, right? Including piano duets, vocal offerings, and a quartet number. In his address, the Reverend J. Holland, who was a former pastor in Upper Sandusky, said the first books for public use in Upper Sandusky, which was known as the Harris Library, were kept in custody of the Methodist Episcopal Church, and later transferred to the public school, and were now the property of the new library. There was a second program in the evening with more music and addresses. So many people attended that one that they couldn't get into the building, and a lot of people left because there was no room to get in. You can't see this very well, I think. Did I bring it? I don't think I brought it. There were a lot of heavy books. What this is in this accession log, so every month they would write down how many history books they bought, how many fiction books they bought, how many children's science books, just basically by your Dewey Decimal Classification, how many books we got and how many books we discarded, and that's how they kept track of how many books were in the library before we had computers. This is from something from the Daily Chief Union in 1946, the first library levy. 1946 to replace the furnace and for upkeep of the library. So just levies for libraries aren't really new. And the levy passed by 79%, which just shows how our community loves the library, right? The Carnegie Library of Upper Sandusky remained in operation for over 70 years until 1986, when the Upper Sandusky Community Library was open to the public. So that's the beginnings of the current library building. According to minutes from the old library board, the Carnegie Library Board meetings, it looks like the discussions on building the new library began around the beginning of 1983, and an architect was hired around then to begin plans. A motion on April 18th of 1983 to purchase the current site from Gibson for $37,000 failed. Apparently they thought that was too much money. But on July 18th of the same year, they approved the purchase for $35,000. The board meeting minutes trace development of the architectural plans over several months through final approval by the state. The notice to bid to find a contractor was published in January of 1985. The bids were opened on March 5th, and the selection of contractors was made on March 19th at the regular board meeting. Groundbreaking followed very quickly on April 16th, so just a little over a month, or a little less than a month later, they were ready to start. The cornerstone was laid on November 29th of 1985, and that's a list of the contents of the cornerstone, which is really kind of an interesting collection of documents and other things. It includes a copy of the contents of the cornerstone, the floor plan of the library, a brochure of services provided by the Carnegie Library, a Wyandot pamphlet, copies of microfilm of dedication and opening of the 1914 library, A list of local authors and their works. Let's see, history of the local library, a copy of a page from the 1985 circulation record book, staff of the library from 1912 to 1985, a brochure for the Wyandot County Historical Society, welcome to Upper Sandusky edition of Daily Chief Union, a map of Upper Sandusky, some postcards at the library, some Statue of Liberty stamps, some uncirculated 1985 coins. Just why they all had to stick it in the cornerstone, I don't know. On Saturday, April 19th of 1986, over 100 volunteers from a lot of organizations throughout Upper Sandusky helped to move the contents from the Carnegie Library down to our new building. These included members of the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, Kiwanis Club, Kiev Club, Boy Scouts, Friends of the Library, the Upper Sandusky High School wrestling team, library staff and board members, and other members of the community. During the move, they found a plaque that read, "In memoriam to members of the Wyandot Literary Club who founded the Carnegie Public Library on April 19, 1912. The move into the new building took place 74 years to the day after the founding of the Carnegie Public Library. The new library was opened to the public on April 24th and dedicated on November 28th of 1986. And just some pictures from the dedication. Invocation, a choral group called the Eighth Notes, is what the notation said. The high school band, the Boy Scouts and their flag ceremony. I have photo albums here and newspaper clippings. You're welcome to look at them after the talk. In 1990, we had an interior remodeling project which added a youth services office, the decorative arches and pillars that we have in the library now, plus the meeting rooms and storage rooms that we have in the basement, and the elevator. In the fall of 2000, we took our card catalogs and we put them online. So that's the start of the computer catalog, right? It took about 3 months for staff of the library to type all those cards in, and I have a couple staff members who actually remember doing that. So that's fun. Well, it's fun for me. I didn't have to do it, but I'm such a geek, I probably would have thought it was fun. In 2004 then, so just a few years later, we joined the SEO consortium, which supports 98 library systems at 277 service points throughout 49 counties across Ohio. And again, all of your Wyandot County libraries are members of this consortium, which is why you can borrow your books in Upper Sandusky and return them in Sycamore, or again, 277 service points across Ohio. This gives us access to over 8 million books, movies, audiobooks, physical items, as well as the online databases, online ebooks, and downloadable audio and video items. In the fall of 2018, we here at Upper Sandusky added a kind of library of things. We call it Adventure Central, which includes telescopes, a sewing machine, educational games and toys, musical instruments, learning how to knit and crochet. I can't even name everything we've got. We add to it periodically. Just a lot of fun. But I was reminded the other day that this isn't the first of the library of things, because some of you may remember that you used to be able to borrow paintings from the library, fishing poles. So yeah, it's an old idea come new. I'm almost done. So that pretty much brings us to the present. but we're always looking for new opportunities to bring exciting new services and resources to our community. Thank you. And I'll introduce Kristyn Wilkins, who is the director of the Mohawk Library in Sycamore.
Okay. I'm trusting this part.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I got through everything, did I?
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
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 That's me. All right. Thank you. All right, as Kathleen said, my name is Kristyn Wilkins. I'm the director at Mohawk Community Library. A little of my background, I've only been the director there for just over 2 years, so I'm still learning, but this was actually one of those things I was really grateful to be asked to do because it is one of the things I wanted to know more about. So a little different from some of the other libraries, we don't have a lot of stuff like memorabilia type of stuff. So this has motivated me now. I want to find these things. So I will say another difference for us is kind of how we started, and that's something I'll talk about here. For me though, when I started at the library, one of the big things and one of the reasons I wanted to work there was I wanted to give back to the community that I've always said raised me. I grew up in the library, and so this was an exciting chance for me to kind of have that opportunity. So we'll go ahead and get started. But in May of 1938, a few citizens headed by the late Mr. and Mrs. Claude Bittler met to discuss the need for an organization of a public library in Sycamore. This was one of my favorite things I found, actually. It was an ad that ran in a newspaper. We have a copy of it in the library. It was from Thursday, June 2nd of 1938, and it was creating this library day where they literally were asking the members of the community to bring in books to donate or to donate money, and I thought that was really cool. I think from day one, our library was supported by our community, and that's really special to us. On June 4th of 1938, a library day was held with the help of the Women's Literary Club to collect monetary donations as well as donations of books to help get the library established. I kind of laughed when I found this. One of our members of our Mohawk Historical Society in Sycamore brought me some minutes from the Women's Literary Club. They're pretty funny to look back and read, some of the stuff they share. But in the minutes, it said the library again rears its head, and this time there were results. So I'm not sure what that says about the previous communication about the library, but I guess we got there. As some minutes are missing, there's no record of the fact that the club had purchased 3 to 5 books a year for their own use, and although not all members did see eye to eye with the idea, these books were given as the nucleus of the library. So I thought that was kind of fun and interesting to hear. The club on the library day served tea, and the tea and donations raised were $50 to help start the library, and the club donated another $25 of their own funds. I again don't know if this is the original group or not, but I love this picture of some of the ladies that were in the group. I love the hats especially, they make me smile. In June of 1938, the Sycamore Community Library opened in a small upstairs room on Main Street. I probably actually shouldn't have shown this slide yet. One thing I found that was kind of a struggle for me is there's not a lot showing the original library in Sycamore, so I wish I had more of that. After talking to community members, we think that the original library was located above the current grocery store. There's a side room in the grocery store for anyone that's been in there, and we think that that room above it was where the original library was held. The library opened with a donation of 285 books, and $170 was available to run the library for the first 7 months. The board members of the library actually volunteered to do all of the work in the early days of the library, including the cataloging, building of shelves, and working as the role of librarians. And at the time when the library first opened, it was open on Wednesday and Saturday afternoons. In 1947, the library became the Sycamore School District Library, an independent school district library. And in 1951, the library moved for the first time. It moved to a downstairs room on West 7th Street. Based on the information we have on this, we think that it was located where the bank is now in town. This is the first one that I've had community members actually talk to me about, that they remember. So I've learned a little bit more, but the biggest memory I get of this is that you had to walk down a very long, dark hallway. So I'm not again sure what that says about this library. That seems to be the memory they all mentioned to me, but I hope that someday I can see some of that, so. In 1958, Miss Alice Vance gave the library a building lot at 101 East 7th Street, and the new building was dedicated in 1960. So this is a picture from the library of the library drawings in the 1959 Sycamore Leader. These are just some articles that were talking about the support needed for the new library building. We found lots of articles about stuff, so I wanted to make sure I included those. Again, it just shows all the support that the community really gave to get this going, which I thought was important. Let's see here. The picture over on the right-hand side is where a house that was located at that location was being demolished for the library. And then those are some of the other pictures of getting donations for it. And then this is the first building. This actually is a current part of our library. Our library was built, the very center section of our library is the original, and then it built out on both sides, so. This I'm pretty sure, although I didn't have documentation of this, is pictures of them moving the books into the first library, which I thought was kind of neat. I just love this picture. She looked really happy. Some of my staff were joking with me about if this is like what everybody thinks we are. But I'm sure she was really great librarian. And then these are some other library employees. I know, that's what I said, I love the hair. Okay. In 1980, the first full-time library director was hired. Her name was Wanda Wagner, and that allowed for further expansion of service hours, and that included evenings, which was an exciting change. In 1984 then, which is up here on the screen, the library was added onto, doubling its original size. In 1986, the Sycamore Community Library changed its name to the Mohawk Community Library just to better reflect our service area. And in 1995, the library held approximately 20,000 items and circulated approximately 100,000 items a year. And they had a computer available for public use. We were also open 6 days a week at that point. These were some pictures then of when, after they did the addition there. And what it looked like afterwards. Okay. The next expansion started being spoken of in 1997. That's when the ground was broken for the expansion. The library building expanded to a building in 1998, again doubling its size and creating a new entrance. So now, for the most part, people recognize our front entrance, which was on a different street. So that was exciting. Our address kind of changed. In 2000, our library joined the SEO consortium. I should go through some more of these pictures. This is pictures of them building that addition, which is what our library looks like now. And this was a dedication ceremony, which actually also happened as the 60th anniversary celebration at the same time. Just again, some different articles. This is what it first looked like from when that addition was done. I love how bright and pretty and clean
I
it
love how
is.
much open space you have.
So organized. All right. So in 2000, the library joined the SEO consortium, which Kathleen kind of took some of what I was going to tell you about, so I guess I'll have to skip that part. Again, the big benefit though is that it allowed so much more opportunity for such a small community to have access to so many more items that we can get in on a daily basis. In 2003, the Mohawk Community Library Foundation was established, which provides financial assistance to the Mohawk Community Library. And then as programming grew, you know, everything from children's to adult program, we really needed space again. So In 2003, the Mohawk Community, in 2013, the addition of the meeting room was dedicated at the Mohawk Community Library with over 2,000 square feet of space to be used for Mohawk Community Library events. But we also allow for public rental of that space as well. So that's a visual of the outside of the addition of that and then the internal meeting room. Just a little current information, we are still a member of the SEO consortium. We have approximately, a little over 1,300 registered borrowers right now and over 60,300 items in our library. We're open approximately 57 hours a week. We circulate all the normal things you would think in the library, from books to books on CD and DVDs, Blu-rays, video games, and other items. And we offer our patrons an opportunity to get a lot of digital items as well, which is a little fun. A couple other things I wanted to show. I think somebody else had these, but one of the members of the Mohawk Historical Society, I think these are actually her reading logs from summer reading. I love them. I was so excited when she sent me these, so I had to include them in here. And then this is our current building. That's all I have. Questions?
For any of us?
I have a question for you.
Oh no, I said I didn't really want questions. I'm scared of this
Well,
part.
I
I'm just
just-
kidding.
You mentioned the name Claude Bittler. I didn't know if you knew any of his history.
I personally do not. Do you?
Okay. Well, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out, because we have a uniform upstairs for
Oh.
one. So, but somebody said that, yeah,
Was he a dentist?
that, well, I don't know whether they said there was like a father. There was one that was in the Spanish-American War, and then another one. So I'm just trying to figure out if this was.
We have Ancestry Library Edition.
I was gonna say, we can look into that.
I mean, that'll give me something to look at and
Yeah.
maybe see.
For sure.
Maybe you could get some information for you
That
about.
would be awesome.
I think there's a Claude T. Bittler in the National Cemetery, Arlington National Cemetery, from Wyandot County.
I have a question for the Carey Library. You said there's blueprints of the desk and that stuff. What did they do? Make blueprints, and did someone build those?
I don't know. I just know the blueprints were there and they were the originals, and I'm still using it to this day. I mean, it's
Built
great,
pretty
I
good.
love it, but,
Built pretty good, apparently.
yeah.
We were looking at, I was doing some research on the local Carnegie Library just down the street a little bit ago, and I was showing Kathleen today that I came across a university that has an archives of information about the different Carnegie libraries. So I pulled up information. They had a 38-page document about the history of the original Carnegie Library in Upper Sandusky in 1913, with all the information about how they came about, the funding for it, and it talked about where the original library was at that time. The reason that they needed a library, they put in it, was the books were in a storage closet at the Union School.
It's a good thing I didn't find that document, I'd still be talking.
But it goes through, it's really incredible, because it was the building changes that were created in 1913 to have it ready for 1914. So they talk about increasing the walls from 8 inches to 13 inches to accommodate different pipes and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, appreciate
I
if
need
you
to go
send
back to that
me,
site and look to see if there's some documentation about
I'm sure there
the
is.
Carey one.
Well, I just want to say, I think it was last week or so, I checked James Harriet's All Creatures Great Small from your library. And anyway, I was looking in the back, there's still that page where you used to
The
stamp.
stampers, yes, yeah.
And I thought, as a kid, I loved checking out books. Of course, it would have been at Carnegie, and you just, I don't know, there was
Yeah,
something
it's something about sitting there and watching them go.
Yeah.
And you knew you were actually getting a book, like whether it was in elementary school or the public library, when they sit there and they put that date on, you're like, now I have a deadline that I have to read the book and have it back.
Those were the nice days, kind of,
And the
because,
cards
you know,
and-
sometimes this automation stuff, it's nice, but
Yeah.
it doesn't always work, where that stamper always worked. I remember doing that, and the accession books.
That's our first library card that we
With the
issued.
little.
Yeah, little metal
Metal?
thing,
Yeah.
but this is number A1, the very first one that was issued to David Garner.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So,
That's it.
you know, you talked about your accession book, Kathleen. I used to type in accession books
Yeah?
when I first started, but we have, well, this is way back from 1907, 1911. I hate to finger them, but they actually have where they went in and put, let me just pull out the whole stack because I don't want to rip one.
Yeah, that's what ours
they
look
were
like,
Yeah, so that's what they actually look like. So you can see,
Yeah,
so yeah. We used to come in every day before we were automated, and we would count literally, you know, manually, how many fiction went out, how many nonfiction went out, which nonfiction they were, and then you had to add up that long line every day, and then at the end of the month, you had to add it up this way, and, I mean, every day we did that when we came in.
I remember doing research, I would go into the library, and when I would use the microfilm, they're like, leave it out because we want to count how many rolls
That's right.
that are used. So they go in there, and there's like 50 rolls out, and they're like, Ron's been here.
Yeah.
I remember at my college library having to go through and see, you do the list, the cards, you know, you had your card pockets, your cards you took out of the pocket, and you'd have the due date on there, and so you had to take the stack of cards that were overdue, so we could send out notices to the people who had overdue books. And then Jill remembers using this little calculator thingy to figure out, at 2 cents a day, what the fine would be for your overdue books, because of course we didn't have calculators. So that's a cool little thing. Otherwise, I've got photo albums and some newspaper clippings. You're welcome to look at them.
Same way here.
She's got a ton of stuff here.
The, like we said, it's changed so much. I mean, what we used to do, when you look at some of these scrapbooks, I'm sure like you got your photo albums, it's like, oh, there's not a lot there, to this. I mean, let me pull it right here. To this. I mean, I know you guys, everybody does so much with the kids. I mean, it's just amazing when you look at scrapbooks from 10 years ago and look at it today, it's like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
so I brought just a couple, so if you are interested in looking at more, you know, come to the library sometime, I'll be happy to let you browse through.
We have lots of these little wooden Carnegie Library, and
And we have some too, so we've got the Carnegie
so
Library.
if you want a souvenir of the program, you can either get the original Carnegie Library, or we have some of the current library. So these are thanks to Upper Sandusky Library cleaning out their basement a few years ago.
And we still have some too, so
Yeah.
yeah, we just, I think we've saturated the market.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm sure if you have some more questions, and if you want to come up and look at some of these items, feel free to come up. So again, thank you. And we'll see you again in about a month, on September 21st, when we have a big presentation about the red
I
slipper.
think Lee's here, one of the presenters. Didn't I see Lee come in?
Yes, Lonnie, thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think Jean Orion's been kind of coordinating all this, and so she keeps adding people to the program. So, and I get to be the MC. So, thank you all again for attending.
Oh, maybe